Hello everybody, my name is Andrew Sandoval. I'm the representative for the City Council for District 5. And the reason I'm calling this press conference is because I think it's the public's right to know that the District Attorney has opened an investigation into Mayor Kimbley Craig and Councilmember McShane for possible conflict of interest and possible political reform act violations. Both of their actions have raised some serious concerns about how taxpayer money was used and handled. As of now, the District Attorney's Office has opened investigations into both Mayor Craig and Councilmember McShane that could constitute potential corruption. This is more concerning because at a council meeting, Councilmember Rocha and I attempted to address the issue with Councilmember McShane, but he told the City Council and the public that in fact no request for funding came from him. In fact, it came from the organization who he was the president of. Later on, through emails provided to the entire City Council, it was discovered that in fact the request did come from him, making requests to the city, using his position to influence how taxpayer funds are being used. I spoke to the mayor after one City Council meeting about McShane's actions and expressed concerns about conflict of interest, and she explained to me that, well, that's McShane and that's something he's always done. And so I expressed to her, well, it still doesn't make it right. And so after investigating more and looking at some budgets and meeting minutes, I discovered that the mayor had also been involved in similar actions. As president of the Monterey Business Council, she also received funding or subcontracts from the city of Salinas through SUBA, which is the Salinas United Business Association. I attempted to reach out to them, but they have refused to produce any documentation for contracts related to that. I think this has put our city administration in a difficult spot. Our city funds should not be used or funneled in a certain direction because of who you know or who you are. And our community deserves transparency and accountability. And we must work better to ensure their trust. Like I said, as of now, the District Attorney has opened an investigation and we are waiting for them to contact the City of Salinas for any potential records that they need.
With regard to that, the District Attorney's investigation, one of our reporters reached out to the DA's office. They asked the DA if they're actively investigating. The DA said that they reached out to the Fair Political Practices Organization. Organization told them they didn't need anything from them just yet, but to stand by. So they say they have informed us that they're not actively investigating on that. Were you aware of that, or are you aware?
Well, that's really interesting that would be the response, because I did receive email confirmation from Assistant District Attorney Berkeley Brannon, and in fact that they did assign an investigator to it. Before I reported this to the District Attorney's Office, I did contact the District Attorney's Office to ask how it works. If we report something to them, they did notify me that if the Fair Political Practices Commission was investigating, then the District Attorney's Office would not be investigating. But I had checked with them and there was no active investigations. So there is some confusion, but like I said, I did receive communication from them the other day that they have assigned an investigator.
With regard to the donations to these organizations, could we speak to, ultimately, if these organizations are benefiting the city, Salinas Valley, by bringing in businesses or events, is that necessarily bad that they're receiving these donations?
No, it's not necessarily bad that they're receiving the donations. What's wrong, and what I believe is illegal, is the way in which requesting for funding occurs. Now, if there's special provisions in the Conflict of Interest Code if you're the president of an organization, which both the mayor and McShane were, and so you really should recuse yourself and not participate either in those discussions or approval of those agreements or payments for those.
So is this more about McShane and Craig not recusing themselves and not adhering to the process, due process?
No, it's really about them using their position in government to influence government decisions, and for their own benefit or benefit of those who they work for.
Now, had McShane and Kimbley Craig had recused themselves from these specific events, the specific votes that you were referencing, would this be an issue still?
It wouldn't be an issue, no, because there's specific guidelines for people serving in public service on how they should handle the public's funds and what processes and what steps they should take to avoid these issues.
Do you have a legitimate concern that money is being used illegally that was obtained in those donations? Is there any
What I have
concern
concerns about is that they use their influence to, in their positions to influence how government funds were spent. That's the concern.
Anything specific that you feel they were influencing for?
Sure. Well, I'll give you an example. This last time, the mayor recused herself from voting on the Salinas United Business Association because, in fact, they received subcontracts from it. And so, in the past, she hasn't done that, and that's a concern. They've received those contracts in the past. That's
What are you hoping? What are you hoping to see as a result of this?
Look, we have to have accountability for people in public service. We can't have like a pay to play or make decisions that benefit ourselves. At the end of the day, we have to follow the steps, and we all take ethics trainings. We all know what constitutes a conflict of interest, and it doesn't matter what position you hold in the city of Salinas, whether it's Mayor Craig, Councilmember McShane. They've been in government a long time, and they should know better.
I guess the question now then is, what do you want to see? What do you want to see as a result of this? Obviously, these happened back in October of last year, right? So moving forward, do you want to see actions taken against McShane, Kimbley, Craig? What do you want to see?
Yeah, I think the district attorney needs to do a thorough and complete investigation, and not pass the buck on to the FPPC. They have more than enough jurisdiction to handle that locally, and I expect them to do their responsibility and investigate. And I think this will set good precedent and policy for the city of Salinas to be more mindful. At the end of the day, the city council is the boss for our top administrator. So what an uncomfortable position to have your boss telling you to approve money for your own organization. I don't know how the average person would respond to that.
Andrew, I have a couple questions. One is, I guess, like from the perspective of the city budget, for example, these big things, do you think that they should have been recusing themselves entirely, or how do you envision that? Because there obviously will be conflicts inevitably going forward. Do you take out a single line item for, you'll have council members who are police officers perhaps, or are married to a police officer. I can just think of a million scenarios that are covered in something as big as a budget for the year.
Right. I think the code of the conflict of interest code and with the FPPC provides guidelines on when people should recuse themselves. And I think it mostly impacts things about when the decisions are being made. Now, I did have a discussion whether or not that item should have been voted on separately, just to avoid mistrust from the public. So yeah, I think if it is going to affect you either directly or a spouse, yeah, you definitely should recuse yourself from that.
And then, are you looking for any kinds of policy changes from the city? You're obviously asking to investigate past actions. Steve McShane no longer is employed by the Chamber of Commerce. So what, I guess going forward, what would you like to see different?
I'm not sure well, the policies already exist, right? The Political Reform Act already exists and conflict of interest already exists. So I think what happened here is it's the council's responsibility to hold each other accountable, because I think it's unrealistic for us to ask the administration to hold us accountable. So I think that going forward, I think we just need to follow the law.
And I also want to jump on some of these questions about sort of the sequence here. I understand that the FPPC rejected 2 complaints, one into each Mayor Craig and Councilmember McShane, and that the FPPC now has a subsequent open investigation into McShane that it initiated itself. So I don't know the content of that investigation. But did you make those complaints to the FPPC? Did you ever get any notification from them?
No, I didn't make those complaints because, like I said, the district attorney made it very clear that if the state was investigating, they would not be investigating. I did make a public records request to the FPPC, and I did see one of the cases, or one of the complaints that was dismissed, and the FPPC, unfortunately, probably doesn't have a lot of bandwidth, and the response to the complainant, I believe, was something like asking what specific influence on a government decision that Councilmember McShane provide. I think the complaint at that point made a very broad statement. And now with the public records that are on file, you can clearly see that Councilmember McShane attempted, or did make an impact on where funding was going.
And then I guess my other question is sort of why now, given that these complaints were made months ago, the events took place months before, and the DA has not made a decision on whether or not to investigate pending this FPPC. That's the same information I got in this what case we're talking about.
Yeah, and like I said, that's very strange that the DA would say that. Like I said, I'd be glad to provide the emails from them if that's the case, because it's really difficult when it's he said, she said. That's why it's so important that there's documentation behind it. I believe in following steps. This is something I've started looking in April, and I attempted to have a conversation. Actually, I did have a conversation with Councilmember McShane face-to-face for several hours attempting to address these issues, but he was just so overtly opposed to dealing with it, although he would say, yeah, I'm going to stop, or I'm not going to do this. Yeah, I agree. But then at the next council meeting, we'd have it again. And so I did my best to follow the steps and have conversations with them and address it that way. But there's a point where you just can't, you have the responsibility to address these kind of things and make sure that the public feels comfortable that you're being mindful of how government funds are being spent.
I hear you. I think everybody would agree with that. I think my question is more, it's unusual to talk openly about a pending criminal investigation. It's like none of us will be able to get any information about, even once it's opened, they just won't tell us anything. They may confirm, yes, we've opened an investigation. But it's like, as far as I can tell, there's not any new information that wasn't addressed, whether privately or publicly, by you and your colleagues on council. And so some of it is like, what do you hope changes, I guess, out of publicly announcing the criminal complaint that you've made?
I think it sheds light. I think the community has known for a long time. I think people who pay attention to government have known that there's something up and things don't appear right. And that all too often people don't raise their voices because they don't think there's going to be justice. Because what happens when you bring up something, that often there's retaliation for folks. And so there is new information. I think that not everyone took the time to look up all the times that the mayor or McShane approved things or made requests. When I first got elected, I had some questions, so I requested information from the city manager at the time, and actually I never received that information. And I thought, well, what's going on? This isn't how government's supposed to work. So I recognize it's something that has been happening for a long time, and although some of the stuff has been corrected, I don't feel like there's been accountability for those council members and the mayor.
So I guess ultimately what you're saying is you want to see more transparency. Because you feel as if they have influenced these votes, these donations, right? But you're not saying that you believe that this money was being diverted or earmarked for something that it shouldn't have been, are you?
No, I'm just saying that they use their influence, and they shouldn't have done that. And the law states they shouldn't have.
And I guess it sounds like you're trying to seek a sense of justice from the DA, but they, to my knowledge, are not currently investigating. And, they may or may not find wrongdoing if they do investigate. If they don't, is this then over for you? Is this sort of the top of the food chain as far as you can take this grievance?
The Fair Political Practices can investigate as well. Like I said, based on the conversations I had with the DA, and he said, if they do it, we won't do it. I figured, well, let's handle that locally. But not only at the FPPC, but the Attorney General appears to have jurisdiction over these kind of things as well. So I believe in following steps. Have open dialogue, have communications. That doesn't work, then you have to find other ways to address it. And so that's what you have to do.
This is actually going to be a hold for air. We're actually working to get some other sound as well. I've got everybody out.
Yeah.
Storm watch. So,
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that storm watch is coming, so.
Yeah, so
Yeah, no worries.
you're not going to see anything tonight, but there will be. It will be a whole release. So
Okay.
I'm sure Felix will be reaching out. If you are comfortable sharing that email that you spoke about from the DA, please just go ahead and send it on over to him. He'd appreciate taking a look at that too.
Yeah, that's of course. Now I have to share it because now, and to be honest, this is one of the reasons I felt it was necessary to have this conversation publicly.
Yeah.
Because if they're gonna not do what they're supposed to or what they committed to doing, everybody needs to be held accountable.
Sure.
But yeah, I'll definitely share that today.
All right, great. Thanks for your time.
All right.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.